Welcome to episode 230 of Inside the SCCA. I'm Brian Bielanski. Welcome to the show. And this is a cool show and a slightly sad show. I guess this is our final Super Tour preview of 2025. We've been through 9 rounds. Our final round is coming up, Watkins Glen this weekend. And that means we've had almost our full season in the books. We've done a preview show for every single one of this year's episodes. They've all been fantastic, and I'm absolutely certain this will be fantastic as well. Our guest tonight, or this afternoon, or today, depending on what time you're going to watch this, because of course, by the baggage of YouTube, you can watch this at any time. Our guest, none other than two-time SCCA Runoffs champion, Daniel Richardson. Hey, Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Welcome to the show. You're coming to us from a nondescript hotel room somewhere in the Finger Lakes region of beautiful upstate New York.
Yes, I am.
We start every show with the exact same first episode. So here it comes, or the first question, I should say. How did you get mixed up in this crazy sport that we love?
So a lot of people say they were born into it. I was truly born into it. My mother and father met each other at pit lane at Summit Point Raceway. And they were both racing. And then my father actually was on the A Sedan newsletter that actually started the American Sedan class. And I grew up at the racetrack. The racetrack family's my home. And, you know, I went to the runoffs in 2001, when my mother was racing. And when I heard all the A Sedan cars take the green flag, I said, you know, I want to do this. And so it was driver's school after that. And then I got the hand-me-down tires from my parents and started off with that at regionals. And then, you know, for Christmas one year, they got my first set of stickers. And then it was the first session on sticker tires. I came across the radio and I said, I need to get a better job. So.
Once you decide, I mean, every kid grows up around the racetrack, wants to become a race car driver. What was the allure? Was it the sound? Was it the speed, the adrenaline rush? Are you an adrenaline junkie?
So yes, I always have been. If you go further back in time, my mother would tell you that she would get phone calls daily from the preschool about me climbing on the highest thing there and jumping off the top of it. And I was always the guy that would go the first one down the new sledding hills, and we used to do all the stupid things. I think the dumbest thing we ever did as kids was there was a very long hill. We took our Razor scooters down as fast as we could into a T intersection and hit the curb, and whoever flew the furthest won the race. So, the adrenaline plus maybe some lack of intelligence there, but it was always that junkie. And then at that runoffs race, listening to 40 A Sedan cars take the green flag and the ground literally shaking, it was the final nail in my coffin. So that was it. I was hooked and I was in. I mean, I was always around it. I always loved it. I loved going to the track. I loved crewing. I loved every part of it. I loved the go-karts and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, when you're in high school, it's kind of like a little bit on the back burner, but that really pushed it right to the front.
That's crazy. Sounds like your childhood was like mine. I grew up in Wisconsin, and we had this hill that we would sled down, and at the bottom we had a ramp. And the problem was that in the landing area, there was like a 1968 Buick. And we always said to all of us kids, if you're ever aiming towards the Buick, bail out. Don't try to steer because you don't want to hit the Buick. Well, I was born mostly blind in my left eye, but I was smarter than all the other kids. So I hit the ramp. I'm heading straight for the rear bumper of the Buick. And I'm trying to steer because I'm smarter than everyone else and more talented. And I smashed the rear bumper. And, of course, on a 68 Buick, it is chrome, it is steel, and it doesn't bend. So I hit the Buick with my right smack dab on my one good eye.
Jeez.
And it swells shut almost immediately. And I go home, and I walk through the door, and my mother is, like, literally terrified because she knows that if that's the good eye and it's damaged, I am completely screwed for the rest of my life. Thankfully, swelling went away. I opened up, and it was fine.
Awesome.
But yeah, we did really stupid things when we were kids, didn't we?
Oh yeah. Well, my mother once told me that she would get a phone call every single day from daycare. She said that she waited for me to have children finally so that I could go through the experiences that she had. And she got to the point where she just asked them, if he's not going to the hospital, don't call me.
My mom was mad because my kid was really well behaved, and she was upset that I wasn't being put through the same hell that I put her through. So, very good. Very good. All right, so when you finally got to racing, did you go right when you were – could you race before 18? I don't know how old you are. I couldn't.
So I went to driver's school right after getting my driver's license.
Okay.
So I was in driver's school at 16, 17, around that range. Back then you had to have two schools.
Right.
So I actually went – my first time in the race car, we went to a test day at Beaver Run, which is now Pit Run. And they had – I can never remember the guy's name, but he jumped in the car and basically sat on the cooler for the cool suit and held onto the roll bar and told me how did it hit apexes. And then after that, I went to the Skip Barber School at the Jefferson Racing Circuit near Summit Point. And then I took the Summit Point SCCA school where my instructor was the Rob Hines.
The Rob Hines.
I like to put the in front of that one.
Yep. Yeah, we've had Rob on the show. He and I know each other for many, many years back in the day. I was a DC region member for a hot second. I lived in Charlottesville for a while, but before that, when I moved to New York, I was a DC region member also, and I met Rob, and Rob is A, the nicest human being you're ever going to meet, B, one of the fastest human beings you're ever going to meet. And if you got a chance to have him as an instructor, that's pretty top notch.
Oh yeah! Not only that, we gave him a radio so that he could yell at me while I was on track, also. So
even better.
Well. Yeah.
So when you're 18 or 17, you know everything, right?
Oh, of course.
How was it taking direction at that point in time?
To be honest with you, I was actually just coming off of playing high school football. So having someone yelling at me like Rob and the other guy that I can't remember his name, that I actually responded well to that. I still in the back of my mind thought I knew better, but I was pretty open to instruction. And I feel like I've never really been that closed off.
Right.
But I definitely am more open now than I was then. There's no doubt about it.
Sure. My dad was awesome fast, but he was my dad, so I didn't really want to hear much of what he said. And then other people who weren't my dad were basically telling me the same thing my dad was telling me, and I kind of like, okay, maybe I should listen to Dad a little bit, and that worked out really well for me as far as that goes. How long did it take for you to get fast?
A lot longer than I would have liked.
Sure.
I will tell you that in the years I've been doing this, I've also been instructing at the SCCA drivers school, competition school at Summit Point for the past 10 years or something.
Okay.
And there's three types of people that go to these schools. One are the track day guys that are kind of dipping their feet into wheel to wheel, and not most, but there's a few of them that decide it's not really for them. And then you have guys like me that really want to be good and like the sport and want to be in there, but they don't exactly have that natural speed to start. And then you have the guys that show up like the Kurt Resitanos and the Marshall Mass and those guys that are just have God-given talent, I've had a couple students that are like that as well. But yeah, I was one of those mid guys. It took me quite a while and a lot of instruction. And it wasn't until 2010 when I decided I wanted to try and go to my first runoffs before I found out just how much I needed to grow as a driver to remotely even get close
right.
to what the fast guys were doing.
Yeah.
It's humbling. It's really humbling.
Isn't
and
it though?
That's one of those scenarios that I think a lot of people these days struggle with it. Like they get into that scenario and they either give up or they think the other person's cheating, or, they think that there's some external force that's causing this big difference gap. But there's the few that show up in that scenario and they say, okay, I know how much I need to gain. I need to work on myself. I need to work on the car. If I put the work in, I'm gonna try and get there one day.
Right.
Those are the people that you see stick around the longest.
Right. So you bring in so many great ideas here, and this is
Sorry, I
gonna be
ramble.
No, this is going to be fun because we're gonna dig into this. We're gonna Dr. Phil this just a little bit.
All right.
If you're not the guy with the God-given talent or a heap of it,
Mm-hmm.
obviously whoever wins the runoffs, you got to have some talent. You've done it twice. You're in a class that there's not a whole lot of new and exciting in a sedan. So once you've got your car to the tippy top of what it can do, there's not a whole lot of development in a sedan. So how does your brain work when you realize, okay, I'm the guy, it's me. I got to make me better. Where do you flip that switch? When did that light bulb come off on you that I got to put the time in now?
So for me, I remember the exact moment that it happened. So at the 2010 runoffs, I went out for the first qualifying session, and I came in and I went out and I swore, I was like, that's the fastest I'm ever going to go. There's nothing left in the tank. Like that's got to be a top 5, right? You come in, and back then we didn't have a lot of the live timing stuff.
Right.
So you kind of knew what you were doing based on what your crew said, but you had no clue where you were with regards to everybody else. So we got the sheet and I looked down and I was like 6.5 seconds or something off of what like McDermott and Slow were doing back then. And I never forget, I'm sitting on this bucket right next to the car, still in the driver's suit, looking at it. And just like with my head in my hands going like 6 seconds. Like there's that famous clip of Lewis Hamilton when he was driving and he got the lap time from the other guys and he found out he was like 1.5 seconds off. He's like 1.5. Like it's just not fathomable in your head, Yeah. And so I was just sitting there like, there's no way, like it's never gonna, like, what do I got to do and all this other stuff. And actually, it was a defining moment for me in my racing career. There's a guy named Dave Jones, and I've said his name a lot. He was helping the team that was right next to my paddock spot at the time, and he came over and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he looked at me and he said, I'll help you out to find it if you're willing to listen. He was part of a big team, and I was like in college or something, and I'm like, I don't have any money to give you. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you see our setup over here. This is the old Camaro and all that stuff. And he said, don't worry about it. Let's just talk. So he started helping me out. I found out about data, and I found out about suspension changes, and I found out about all this stuff. And then he really kind of helped me focus on the areas I need to improve on. And the data was like clear as day. That data doesn't lie. And from that, once I saw that there was an improvement available to me, then I knew that, this is possible. I just need to go out and do it. I need to get better as myself, and I need to get the car better, and we just got to go do it. And that kind of opened up the doors for me.
So Dave Jones, in your class, a fellow competitor?
No, he was helping. He doesn't race anymore. He kind of helps guys out. He's based out of the St. Louis region. He was helping a T1 car at the time, so it was a different class.
Okay.
But he's just random, nice guy, came over and offered a hand. And, I think that moment literally turned it around for me.
So do you still talk to him?
Very frequently. He still helps me to this day.
So did you ever ask him what made him walk up to you and make that offer?
I don't think I have, actually. I should ask him that at some point. I'm not sure. But, he's told me a lot that he likes working with me. And I don't know. He's one of those guys though. Like he in the time that I've worked with him, that was 2010. It's now 2025, and we're still working together. So 15 years. He's come up and asked me about fellow competitors asking him for help, and whether I would be okay with that. And I said absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
And it's just he's one of those guys that he can tell when someone's in need and just wants to help. He loves making people faster.
Yeah.
That's what he likes doing.
It's funny. When young in my TV career, I was thought I knew everything and figured, I'm the producer. Everyone's supposed to listen to me, and realizing that the anchors were 20 years older than me and 20 years plus more experience than me and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't get the idea that respect was earned and not given, no matter what the title was. And two guys took me out for a beer and basically had a talk with me. And I've asked you the question, have you ever asked Dave why he did that? I think I need to go to my friend, my mentor, and ask him that question, because there's no reason for them to do that. So what was it in me, being a smart-ass little jackass at the time, that they saw that made them take enough interest to pull me aside, have a beer, and say, dude, you got to do some things a little differently? Because I wouldn't probably be sitting here with you today after 35 years in television and radio having this conversation without that conversation back then. So I think it's time for both of us to maybe ask some questions.
In that breath, I probably wouldn't still be racing today if it wasn't for that conversation. Yeah. So I completely understand what you're saying.
Okay, so that conversation happened in 2010.
Yeah.
Your first Runoffs championship was 2023.
Yeah, took a while.
That's 13 years, and I'm Polish, so that's the best my math goes. What was the journey from 2010 to 2023?
So, and I'm going to do my best to not get emotional here.
No, that's okay.
It was a long one. I told myself that my one goal for each year was to come out faster than the year before.
Okay.
And kept working with Dave, kept doing all that. So in 2011, and you're going to laugh, so I've been racing since 03, 04.
Right.
2011 Runoffs at Road America was the first rain race I'd ever driven in my entire racing career. And I started 15th in that one, and I finished 4th.
Okay.
And I thought it was just, I was walking on water. And then from there, I kind of danced around in the 4, 5, 6 range for many years. And then we started getting to a point where we started really competing at the Nationals. And I can't remember what it was called before the Super Tour, but really the national races.
Right.
And we started picking up speed. And then when the Runoffs moved to Sonoma, we got our first podium, which was really cool. And then from there, we kept getting faster, but the car just really didn't want to win anything, apparently. So in 2019, I started on the front row next to Greg, and the car broke before we got to turn 3. That was rough. And then in 2020, ran a really good race, had a terrible start. I was actually ahead of Greg, who won that year, and then the car cut off on me about halfway through. And then in 2021, on the pace lap, the transmission locked up and ended up in turn 1 at Indy. And then in 2022, they graced us with going back to VIR, which is very close to my home track. And in 2022, I was leading the race, and the car broke on me again. So it was 19, 20, 21, and 22 where mechanical failures kept us off the podium. And I will tell you that this is where the emotions come in.
Okay.
In 22, I almost quit.
Yeah.
It was enough. And I had a lot of friends, Taylor Hyatt, all my crew guys, and like even Andrew Aquilani came over and talked to me a little bit and say, don't give up type deal. And so I said, all right, we'll do it again. And then I was this close to quitting. And then in 23, we won the first one.
Okay. I'm not surprised about the emotion.
Yeah.
I hear some kid. Are the kids in the background in the hotel room?
I have one of my daughters here, and
Okay.
I keep trying to get her to stop making noise.
No, that's okay. It's actually really good because it's going to lead me to my next question, and you know where I'm going with this.
I'm sure.
Hi. Which daughter?
This is Annie.
Hi, how are you?
Which I have a really cool side story about Annie.
Okay.
So when she was born, she was born in August of 2018.
Okay.
And it was right before the Sonoma runoffs. And so at 6 weeks old, we flew her across the country to Sonoma for the runoffs.
Yes.
And Kurt Resitano and I pushed her for the track walk in her stroller around Sonoma. And she is officially the youngest person to ever go around Sonoma Raceway on four wheels.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. So have they seen the interview?
Which interview are you talking about? No. Yeah.
I'm thinking specifically the interview right after your first runoffs win.
Oh, man, I got a lot for that one. Short answer is no.
Okay. Someday they will.
I'm pretty sure my wife is keeping that in her back pocket.
I'm sure she is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clearly, two of the best interviews I've ever seen after any race win in 35 years of following and being part of and watching motorsports on television happened that race weekend. Yours and Jared Odrick.
Yeah.
It was so good. I'm not going to spill the beans because she's right there with you.
Yes.
But I will put a link to it in the show notes, folks. You have to go back and watch Daniel's post-race interview after winning his first runoffs. It is absolute YouTube gold.
In my defense,
yes.
I literally did not know the race was over. And so I did not mentally prepare for the interview when I pulled into pit lane. And when I say I pulled into pit lane, I almost did another lap and realized the last minute and drove through the grass to get into pit lane.
It was so good. And you were the emotion was so raw and sincere and authentic. I could come up with all of the cliche, but none of them are cliche because it was so true. You could tell, and I didn't know anything about your story up to that point. I was at my first runoffs? Was that the first VIR runoffs? No, it was the second VIR runoffs.
It was the second, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so this was my second runoffs at VIR and still kind of learning all of the different names and players. And I didn't know anything about your story at that point, but I immediately wanted to know more. So I'm still not clear why it's taken us so long to have you on the show. But yeah, so I could tell right there, I'm like, that is exactly what the SCCA is all about. And now that I hear, toiling since 2010 at your first runoffs, coming so close, then hitting the podium several times, then broke, win. I would have been, as soon as I had kids, I cry at the drop of a dime now.
Me too.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's like the moment Alex was born, I get emotional over everything. So I know exactly where it comes from. It all comes and wells up. You start even in that like one time from when you realize it's over, you cut through the grass to get to victory lane. You've got 500 yards to think about the fact that you're a national champion, and then all of that work that goes into it, and then they stuff a microphone in front of your face. You wouldn't change a thing though, would you?
No. Well, I probably would have kept it out of the grass and maybe fared a little bit better. But no, now you can kind of see where a lot of that emotion came from.
Yeah.
It was really the going from the ready to quit thing to winning it. And then what was really cool was I actually, my daughter had a career day at school recently, and I made like a whole PowerPoint thing, and I didn't know a lot about what we could do. Now I know for next year I can actually bring some of the cars to the school and stuff.
Oh, yes.
So I show up and I'm there with stop. I'm there with firefighters and doctors and police officers and all these cool people. And um, and for some reason, the teachers kept telling me that the kids were really excited to hear my story. So yeah, I told them the whole story. And then when I got to the page about all the runoff stuff, and I went through kind of like I just did with you, with each one of the years. And then I stopped at 22 and told the kids like I was ready to quit and all that other stuff. Same thing.
Yeah.
And, the teachers were just like, that's incredible. Like, that's the message that we want to give to the kids. And to be honest with you, that was part of it, was thinking about my kids and like the example I want to show for them of this, like, it's just when you're ready to give up, that's when like the good stuff starts. That's when at your absolute bottom.
It's like the career day with Derek Jeter and the astronaut and the banking guy, and you're the banking guy.
Yeah, pretty much. Well,
so
originally when she asked me to do it, I said, because my company does commercial AV installation. Yeah. I said, so you want me to go in and talk about installing TVs and stuff? And she goes, no, I want you to talk about race cars.
Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So let me take a quick stop here, and I'm going to thank all the people that helped me put the show on. And when we come back, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about A Sedan and a lot of the changes that made with the club in the last year. And I know you've been kind of at the forefront of sticking up for your class. So I find that to be really interesting. I didn't think about that until we started talking here. But we're going to talk about that for a few minutes. And then we're going to talk about Watkins Glen Super Tour. So hang with me. Don't go anywhere while we do this. Real quick, want to thank everybody here who was part of making Inside the SCCA a weekly thing now, going on 230 episodes, halfway through our 5th season. And I want to thank Solar Performance Specialties. Of course, all the logos are up above my head over here. Solar Performance Specialties, these folks are at most of the national solo tour events, and of course Solo Nationals. Dave Whitworth and his family are fantastic ambassadors for the sport. Whenever I need something for my solo program, I go talk to them. Of course, it's Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. They're the ones up here. I don't ever good at pointing. RaceSchool.com is one of the best motorsports racing schools in the country, based out here at Button Willow. We got 2 tracks now. I think one of the things that makes them special, 2 of the things that makes them special, is they have a really cool system for the way they teach. It's not like any school that I've heard of in the past, and how they do things is pretty unique. A lot of one-on-one instruction as well. But also, being in Southern California, you can kind of be guaranteed you're going to have pretty decent weather for your driver school. So if you're going to spend all that money, you might as well do a driver school in good weather conditions. So great folks out there at RaceSchool.com. Appreciate them and all that they do. Of course, we also have our good friend David Pinterick. He is part of William Pinterick and Associates, and he is the head honcho there. And if you have any needs to help with your retirement planning, money, financial planning advice, Dave's a great guy, and certainly want to make sure that you check in with David, and he will not steer you wrong. So very cool there. And then finally, the official sim racing sponsor, our partner is Ray Esports. Stevie Ray puts on some great e-racing. A lot of SCCAers involved with what he does there, and he's got Tuesday night races as well as the Weekend Warriors on the weekends. That's usually where I jump in. Yeah, their Weekend Warriors are Sports Renault, or Spec. Oh boy, I just showed how old I am. Spec Racer Ford, Spec Miata, Formula Ford, and Formula V. A whole bunch of great stuff, and check him out and all of their stuff. All right, back to the action here, and we're going to talk with Daniel Richardson. 2 things, actually. Since I just talked about Ray Esports, when I was reading the post-race last year in Sports Car, one of the things you mentioned of putting the work in is putting in simulator work. How do you use the simulator?
So it's very interesting. So when the simulator world came into play, what I've noticed is the people that went racing first and then went to the simulator, there's a little bit of a disconnect there.
Oh, yeah.
But then you have the younger generation that started with the simulator that are now going racing, and man, they are fast. You know, I kind of wish I had that when I was starting off. But for me, Originally, I was using the sim to try tracks that I had never been to,
Right.
especially like when the runoffs went to the West Coast. I did 1,000 laps around Laguna Seca. I did 1,000 laps around Sonoma, and it was great because when I went out there, within 2 or 3 laps in the first practice session, I was right where I needed to be,
Right.
to keep working. And then in addition to that, you have to take the sim for what it is. There's a lot of things you can do in a simulator that you cannot do in real life. But there's what I've found is the sim really works well on your muscle memory,
Right.
and it works really well on your reactions. And I've found that the like all of the brain power you use for racing and stuff, it's like doing a workout for that.
Right.
So I think it's in the same way that a football player works in the gym and does practice, for racing. I think the simulator is our version of football practice.
Right.
And I think it's very important. I think just like there's a couple different things that you can do to increase your speed at the racetrack, and data and working on the suspension, all this other stuff. But everyone talks about, how do I work on myself as a driver? Well, now there's a way to do it. You can get the seat time without spending all that money and time on cars and track days and all that other stuff. It's pretty invaluable, I'm not gonna lie. And then, I host a little league in the off season, and like the Phoenix boys come and we all get on Discord and yell at each other while we're racing, and it's a good time with your racing friends and stuff too. Yeah. So it's invaluable.
I didn't start until 2020, and I'll be honest, I struggle to this point, and I've just made a huge commitment. I'm going to be starting, I guess I'll do breaking news on this show tonight. We're going to launch in July, I think July, maybe August, but probably July. We're going to start Inside Sim Racing, this show for sim racing. And I have committed, because my plan is to get back in the race car. I haven't been wheel-to-wheel racing in a long time. And my plan is to get back behind the wheel, IRL, as the sim racers call it, in real life, which I think cracks me up. But anyway, I plan to go back and get in a car. And I think, just like you, I think sim racing is an incredible tool to help me get back in shape. When I say shape, I'm not talking about like running shape. Get back into like race brain shape. And I've made a real commitment that I'm going to really focus. I want to be a really good sim racer, because I think it will transfer over. I think the same processes that I will have to do to become good at sim racing will be the same processes that I'm going to have to do to become good again. I should say again, because I was never great when I was racing in cars to start with. But to become good, or at least not embarrassing, on the racetrack, I think it's the same brain power. But yeah, it's just so hard. You feel the car doing this, you feel the car doing that, and you don't feel that for the most part in sim racing, unless you've got a motion rig, and even then it's not 1-to-1. But I'm really going to make a commitment to put the hours and the time in to get good at it. So that's why I wanted to ask you about it. Whenever I get someone on, especially someone now that I know didn't start sim racing until after they started racing, it's a hard transition. It's almost like autocrossers who go road racing are typically really good road racers. Not always, but typically. But road racers who then try to go do autocross can't process how to. Wait, you have to learn the track without driving it? Yep. You have to memorize the racetrack without ever being in a car. Yep. It's just hard to do. So, all right, real quick, let's talk about this for a few minutes, and then we'll get on to Watkins Glen. Controversial, problematic changes in the SCCA this year. Some classes moving, some classes not part of the runoffs, some classes combining with other classes. It's been a tough year for some racers and trying to figure this out. There's been some bumps in the road. SCCA's taken a couple of, shots to the chin over this whole thing. Your class was part of all of this, A Sedan. And you were, remind me, what was the initial plan? A Sedan was supposed to be combined with T1?
No, T2.
T2, okay.
Yeah.
And I think it was supposed to be racing together this year, but actually merging the classes next year, right?
So the original plan, I believe, and I could be wrong on this. It's been a lot to try and follow through the whole process,
Right.
but I believe the original plan was that we were going to race. Yes, we were going to race together this year, but they were going to implement a whole bunch of changes for this year to see how well we raced with T2 after the changes, and then combine the classes in 26. And I believe that's what the slated plan was,
Right.
but that plan changed quickly.
Right. So if those who follow along, who've got their scorecard and are scoring at home, that's similar to what they're doing with GT3U and STU. They took GT3, made some changes that they thought was going to bring it closer to STU, and they've been running in the same races this year so that they could get data to compare the changes and see how close they were. And next year, there will be no GT3. Those cars are all going to be part of STU. And of course, whenever you're combining two classes, it's kind of hard sometimes. You're part of the A Sedan Advisory Committee?
Yes.
You guys have done something that I don't think anybody thought anybody would get to do, and that is help steer this process. Because it doesn't look like you're going to combine anymore, right?
So basically, this is what we want to do. And we were in the middle of doing a transition a little bit, and they kind of gave us the opportunity to show if we could turn it around after the transition. And in 2023, we had 11 cars at the runoffs.
Right.
And then last year we had 17 or 18, something like that. And we were one of the few classes that showed some serious growth from year to year on that one. And they rewarded us with kind of, not getting rid of it completely, but putting a little, maybe we'll try it next year type of idea on it to see if we can continue that growth. But we've been working really, really hard to try and keep AS 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 because, quite frankly, the rules that they had proposed for speeding AS up to try and race with new Porsches and stuff, like in my little 91 Camaro, it was a little much. So we're hoping that we're still going in the right direction, and they'll still have a place for us, because there's a lot of people that love our class and love watching it. And, I think we put on one heck of a show. I mean, the YouTube views on the runoffs kind of show it. So
in the end, all of the changes have to do with numbers.
Yes.
We've got Formula 6, which is completely out of the runoffs because they didn't get their numbers to even be runoffs qualified. And then we could talk about the small bore open wheel classes. Tough for them because they've not been allowed to be in most of the Super Tours, but they're going to be in the runoffs. When it comes to numbers, the sedan classes, the closed wheel classes have it a little bit easier because you can combine them more easily with other classes. The small open wheel classes, it's impossible. There's really no place for them to combine to help with the weekends. A sedan is, first you grew your numbers, which is real important. But it does play okay with some other classes, right?
To an extent, yeah. The problem is lap time wise, we can be very close to T2 lap times.
Right.
We can be very close to T3 lap times, depending on what track we're at. But A Sedan makes its lap so differently.
Right.
I mean, that to the point where it's almost dangerous if we were to have to actually race against. I mean, perfect example was at Mid-Ohio for the Super Tour. I was really close to those two T2 BMWs, and they might not have been able to see it on the feed, but in the driver's seat, I could see those differences very evidently.
Right.
And, I was very aware of what was going on, and I was very cautious because I'm not racing them.
Right.
But you put us in a situation where I am racing them, maybe I'm going to be a little less cautious and try different things. And maybe that puts us in a little bit more of a dangerous scenario. And I'm just not quite sure how to make a 40-year-old, pony car race against a, 5-year-old German touring car.
Right.
It's just not. But anyway, we're going to do the best we can. Everyone still wants to race. Everyone still wants a place to play. They were very generous this year. I believe we're going to be running our runoffs race at the same time as T2.
Right.
Which, to be honest with you, is, I think, more the answer. Give us some combined runoffs groups. We race mixed racing all year long. What's the difference?
Yeah, and obviously there's tradition.
Yes.
We've never done it that way. That is like that is the death knell for any organization, by the way. And I've been involved in a lot of organizations, motorsports and otherwise. When you get this mentality of, well, this is the way we've always done it, that is a recipe for disaster. But the tradition at the runoffs for as long as I can remember, and I think it's always been that way, is it's the one time of the year that every class was guaranteed to have their own race. And obviously with the idea of trying to pare the runoffs down to 2 race days with shorter qualifying and all of that, you can't do that with 26 classes. I've also been, I don't know if you're a long-time watcher of the show, and if you're not, you don't have to admit to it. But since day one, almost, I have said that we have too many classes in the SCCA. Way too many. It's confusing for new people. It's hard to run race weekends with all those classes. Nobody gets enough track time. Nobody. I don't care. I've never heard any one of our drivers say, oh, I get plenty of track time at an SCCA race. No one's ever said that. So in order to help with some of those things, and although we're not really helping with the track time department with these changes, you have to make changes. And sometimes they're hard changes. And, we also have, yours is a 40-year-old car, right?
Yeah.
And yours is one of the newer ones.
Yeah.
We've got 60, 70-year-old cars still racing on nationals at Super Tours. Now, I hate it for them that maybe it's time to think about doing something else with those cars in some cases, in many cases. Attracting new drivers, young kids don't want to be racing against 60, 70-year-old cars typically. It's just a fact of how kids think these days. So it's hard. It's all hard. There's no great solutions. There's no way to make these changes without pissing someone off.
No.
And we'll see how things play out. I'm glad for you guys that you're able to find a solution that seems to be workable, at least right now.
For now, nothing's guaranteed.
Right.
But and to be honest with you, a lot of the SCCA formula, has worked so well for so long because there were very few players in town.
There weren't any other players.
Correct. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, for a long time, and then NASA popped up and some others, but now it's a very saturated market.
Yeah.
And the name of the game, and when I talk to a lot of people, is $1 per minute on track.
Right.
And they have something that they need to figure out. People that are way smarter than me need to figure it out. But
Right.
I'm just going to keep stay in my lane and do what I got to do. But
and the problem is, as long as SCCA's core product is sprint racing, we will never win the $1 per minute on track. Never going to win that game. So we need to make sure we do everything else really, really well.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we maximize those few minutes that we do get on track. We got to make sure that the competition's really good. We got to make sure that we can bring in young drivers to continue to tradition. I'm 55. When I go back to being my new Ricky, I'm going to be 56 or 57. But we got to have younger people part of this. It's not going to be sustainable. So, it's a tough discussion. We'll continue to have it. It's a discussion that we've been having since I got started in 1988, and it'll never stop. So, but I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk with us about it and kind of through your experience. All right, Watkins Glen, Super Tour, final 2 rounds. Let's first talk about Watkins Glen the racetrack. What do you love about, or what do you hate about Watkins Glen?
So, really quick, for a long time when I was younger, my mother wouldn't let me come race here because she was scared to death of it.
Why?
My father, she thought I was going to destroy everything, and because I had that mentality of
Sure.
I can't die, right? I'm a teenager, I can't die. But my father would tell me all the time that it was his favorite track on the planet. And then when in 2010 we had to come here so I could qualify for the runoffs, she didn't have any choice but to let me run it.
Yeah.
And the moment I went up the S's the first time, I fell in love. Like, it is just historic. It's got a flow to it. It's just, and it's one of those tracks where, you know, I keep talking about this entire time about how I'm like a nut job and I no fear of death and adrenaline rush. This is that track. This track rewards courage. It rewards large cojones. It rewards all of these things. And it's just, there's no place like it, in my opinion. It's incredible.
Yeah. What's the key? Is there a certain couple of spots, or do you have to be on it and courageous every corner of every lap?
So yes, the key to going fast at Watkins Glen is comfort and courage. You got to be comfortable with your car enough to have courage with it. It rewards taking risks. It rewards taking chances. As far as technicality is concerned, throttle application and when you do it is probably the absolute most important thing here. The track is very cambered in a lot of the corners. It rewards stiffening up the car a little bit. It rewards taking out some of that camber from your tires. It rewards a lot of suspension changes that you wouldn't make at many other tracks. But more than anything, you talk about the toe, you talk about the heel, you talk about going up the S's, you talk about when you're coming off of the brake pedal going into turn one, talking about how long you stay on the gas before you get into the bus stop. You know, it's throttle application is make or break here. And because of that camber, you can really use it to your advantage a lot more here than you can at any other track. But that's just me speaking from a rear-wheel drive car that has a very little tire contact.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to watch any of the IMSA race this weekend?
The entire thing.
Okay. I believe that the hardest track in North America in the rain is Watkins Glen. For all of those things you said, especially the courage part, and the reason you have to have courage is because there's so much downside if you get it wrong, that when you get it wrong in the wet, you're going to hit something, and you're often going to bounce back into traffic and get hit by other people.
Yes.
I just think in the wet, and I haven't even looked at the forecast. We recorded this on Monday night. It'll go up on Tuesday. I haven't even, should I?
There's no point. So Watkins Glen gets the lake effect. Tomorrow's forecast could change on an hourly basis, but you're welcome to look. Right now it looks like thunderstorms for 4 days straight.
Oh boy. So that's always a concern for me whenever I'm watching any race at Watkins Glen. You're right. It does look like there's rain Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's going to be likely. Weather will play some sort of a role. You've got a car with really thin tires comparatively. That isn't always bad for the rain, though.
Nope.
Are you hoping for rain?
So I am a big fan of rain racing. I absolutely love it. Always have been. It's not because I want to boast about being a good driver. It's not because of any of that. For some reason, in my screwed up brain, when it starts raining, I just get so relaxed inside the car.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the fight or flight adrenaline that's telling me like you have to relax or you're gonna die.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love rain racing. And I'll tell you, here with the camber and ever since they did the repave, I'm going to have to from the aspect of the penalty of being wrong here, I agree with you. It's probably the most dangerous in the rain. But as far as actual difficulty driving here in the rain, I think since the repave, it's actually become a lot easier. There are some spots you have to be very, very careful of. The number one spot would be the pit entry line, which happens to be in the apex of the final corner.
Right.
It's basically ice the second you touch it while it's wet, so forget it. And then obviously any painted surfaces, any painted curvings, anything like that.
I've got about 12 IMSA drivers who are sending me a text right now. They want you to be their coach because if you don't think it's too bad, they need to talk to you. It'll be very interesting if the weather does anything close to what it shows in the forecast. But you're right. It's also, the northern half of the United States, the forecast is meaningless until like an hour beforehand.
Correct.
So growing up in Wisconsin, I know that for certain. So there's a couple of places, and we're really fortunate in North America that we get to race, not just SCCA, all of the amateur-ish racing organizations. We get to race at some pretty amazing places. And the Glen is one of those spots, like my home track of Road America, with so much history. And there's so much to do around Watkins Glen that it's a great place to take the family and spend a whole week. You're at Watkins Glen a week before the race. There's all of the wine country of the Finger Lakes. There's really cool stuff. You're not that far from Niagara Falls. You could make a trip up there for the day. It's just a really cool place. And when we can make our Super Tour races at these destination racetracks where there's more to do than just go racing, I think that's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, so we were blessed this year that they moved the date a little bit later in June. Yeah. So my daughter was out of school. And so she's here. Obviously, she was jumping in front of the camera earlier. And then my wife will be up here Wednesday with my twins.
Yep.
And they'll be coming up too. And then my father's coming and everyone's coming down. And, the wife likes to go do the wine tours on the train thing that goes around the lake. Like, that's pretty cool. And, the restaurants are really great. It's a very beautiful area. And then if you have the time, my friends and I, before COVID shut down half of it, but my friends and I used to go down and hike the Glen.
Oh, cool.
Every year. And we got pictures of it. And it's a beautiful hike. You can go into waterfalls and all sorts of stuff. And it's in a gorgeous area. I mean, there's not much you can complain about here at Watkins Glen.
My wife went to Ithaca College, just down the street.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
And when she took me there before we got married, she's like, "Oh, we got to go to these beautiful waterfalls, and they're just gorgeous." And I'm like, "Oh, great! I love good waterfalls. Let's go do it." So apparently, she didn't realize that it hadn't rained in like 6 months before we got there, and we got to these beautiful waterfalls, and it was just a trickle. I'm like, "Where's all the water?" But yeah, there's a vineyard up there, and I should probably remember the name, but they sold a raspberry wine, and if you take that and you put it in the fridge or the freezer, it becomes like raspberry syrup, and then you pour it over vanilla ice cream. Oh, it's so good. I don't know.
You're not giving me good ideas for the weekend. You need to stop.
Well, no. You should pick up a bottle on Wednesday. And then on Sunday night, after you win, you then open the bottle and share it with your crew.
You better knock on wood.
Exactly. That's right.
It's American Sedan, always something.
Exactly. Any other thoughts about Watkins Glen? What makes it fun?
If you come here with the mentality of being a fan of the sport more than you just want to go have fun, it probably enhances the entire experience by double. If you know the history, and even if you don't know the history, there's enough history here when you just walk around by going to the the lodge and all the places and seeing everything on the walls and stuff. I mean, me growing up in a racing family, all of this stuff, I know, heard of all of it, seen all of it. The number of, amazing fantastic drivers that have literally put a tire down on this track is just, it's incredible. And it adds such a spark to the weekend. If you truly appreciate racing. Now, if you're coming up here just having fun, you don't care about any of that, you'll enjoy yourself too. But if you're a true racing fan, this is the place to be.
Yeah, I consider myself somewhat of a historian of the sport, and a place like Seneca Lodge, the stories. I'd like to go to a place like that and grab my favorite adult beverage and just kind of close my eyes and try to hear, Dan Gurney and all of the greats who I know have walked through that door and sat at that bar, and then you look around and it's just it's the same feeling I get when I go to Siepkins at Road America.
Oh yeah.
It's just so cool. So Daniel, thank you. I knew this was going to be a new discussion. I'm upset that we didn't do it 2 years ago, but it's good that we finally got it done. So, cool. This is the time of the show where I get to let you thank all of the people that help you go racing. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to start off with my wife. She is an absolute trooper. She's been dealing with my children, and I almost said it again. And she's been taking care of everything back home so that I can do what I love. And she's been 100% supportive. I warned her early on, and she drove head into that. But no, she's been incredible. And then, my parents, I wouldn't be here without them. My mom is such an integral part of the team. She's, retired. That's what we didn't talk about. So my mother's a retired NASA engineer. And so she, after retiring from NASA, she now, uses all that engineering knowledge on the car. And so that's what she does. And she's been integral part. And then my father's just been supportive as much as he can for as long as he can.
Yeah.
And, even, their main crew and friend from when they were racing Rick Chavaro, he now helps me. And he used to play Mario Kart with me at home when I was 6 years old. Track, he's an amazing guy. And then the list is endless. There's so many people. Dave Jones, I definitely wouldn't even be anywhere near where I am right now without Dave Jones. And then it's just, and then oh man, I hate using the word sponsors because I feel like they're part of the team also, but Hoosier works incredible with us. Tim Gilvin and Jeff Spear, the two of those guys, I could talk to them for hours, and they listen and they help me with everything. And we have open discussions. And Autogear's been working transmissions with us for a long time. They've been part of the family, and there's been a lot of back and forth, and I've tried to help them with their designs, and they've been helping us. And and then Angelo at Anze Suspension. Angelo is just incredible. Took him a long time for him to pick up the phone, but as soon as he did, he immediately became family. And he stayed with us at the Runoffs a couple times. He plays with my daughters. He's an incredible person. And and then I got John Hayworth's helping us with brakes. He's been working on NASCAR stuff for a long time, and it was really cool. We got to go down to Richard Petty's shop and work with him on getting brakes set up for the car. And my mom actually ran into the King once going down there, which was pretty cool. And then I'm trying to go through the whole car with everyone that's helping. Of course, Carbotech. Oh my gosh, dude, Carbotech's been amazing. It was a long time where I thought I knew better. We talked about how we thought we knew. Yeah, I thought I knew better. And then, I gave Mike a chance, and we tried him, and it instantly picked up 1/10 of a G of braking downforce, or braking G load. And I called up Mike the next day. I said, let's go. Yeah. I'm in. What do we got to do? Cool. And he's been amazing. Like, he just, even when I kept telling him, like, we're happy with this stuff. We're happy with this stuff. He would still come by, shake hands, and smile, and be Mike. Yeah. And, when I was ready, he was there, and it was great. And I can't complain. But I really got to give credit to Dave Jones more than anything. I know I talked to him about it earlier, and I know I already said his name, but he works tirelessly, and he has gotten me to where I am. It's just, I mean, from sitting on a bucket with my head in my hands, looking at Tom Slow and Andy McDermott and John Heidrich and saying, how can these are superhumans. They're gods. Like, there's no way
they're aliens.
I'm immortal. There's no way I can catch these guys. To, shaking hands with Andy after the race, because we were just racing door to door for a little bit. We had so much fun.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. And then the entire A-Sedan community. We are a bunch of knuckle-dragging rednecks that drink beer and have a great time at the racetrack. Sure, we swap some paint, but, we're kicking the cars sideways. We're laughing. We're having a good time. It's just, the whole thing's amazing. And there's a reason I bring my daughters around as much as I do. It's because of this whole family environment. And I want them to experience what I've experienced and see that all of the problems of the world stop at the front gate.
Yeah. It's a good place to get away and not think about the outside world for a while, especially in the challenging times that we're in today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Daniel, thank you.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
This has been a lot of fun. Look forward to calling your races this weekend, and I will not be at the Glen. Greg will be, but I will see you at the Runoffs.
Sounds good. I'll see you there.
Very good. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Inside the SCCA, presented by RaceSchool.com. Did you like what you heard? Did you like what you see? Check in and subscribe to the RacingWire Podcast Network and the Racing Network on YouTube. Don't miss any episodes. It would also be great if you leave a comment, especially if it's a good one. If it's a bad one, put it on someone else's page. On Twitter or X, you can find me at Race Announcer. There's a new Inside the SCCA every week. I'm Brian Bielanski. I can't even say my own name. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a great weekend. Stay safe and go play with cars.